Hello, hello. How are you today, Kim?
I'm feeling good, Nick. How are you feeling?
I'm excited for some virtual sales live,
Yeah,
and
I am too.
it's been funny. It's been blowing up my phone, and we've had a lot of great questions so far.
Yeah?
And I think we might have hit on something. It's like EI might, emotional intelligence maybe isn't something that comes up top of mind when we think of B2B.
Or even just sales, I think, right? Like, I remember getting my first sales career, and my sales manager made it very clear. He's like, "Kim, keep your emotions at the door." And that was hard for me, right? But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think as sales has evolved to more tech and the trends have moved us away, more people have assumed that means less personality, less people, more dry, more transactional. And I
Yeah.
feel like 2021, 2022, thanks to COVID, is actually pushing us back to where we should have been. And that's, you can't just send an email. You can't just make a harsh phone call. You need to connect with people on a personal level, and that's how you win. And I think this is the reemergence of emotional intelligence in sales.
So is it a reemergence, or is it something that should have always been there, and now it's like now we're actually like putting a focus on it? Because I feel like it's something that maybe was always there before, but with, like, when we got behind computer screens and everything, like it just ebbs and flows, right? And when you're like hunkering down, your head is down, you're like, okay, I just need to communicate. We lose that. And emotional intelligence is a skill that, if not practiced, ends up becoming lost.
Yeah, I
What are your thoughts on that?
absolutely. I don't emotional intelligence lurked in the background, but it's a hard one to answer because it should have always been there. It's how I built my career was building relationships, getting to know people and earning trust first and
Yeah.
foremost. When people trust you and you respect their time and you get take the time to get to know them, that's when opportunities happen. Trust is that lubricant that will make things move, but it's also the thing that'll grind things to a halt. And so I think emotional intelligence is going back to trust. Without trust, like that whole like they must like, trust, and believe in you. I think trust
Mhm.
is. I feel like you're going to go somewhere else. I'm curious. What are you
Well,
thinking, Kim?
I am. Like, I'm wondering, because we're gonna talk about sales here, but
Hmm.
can you buy from someone that you don't necessarily trust? Like, is that possible? I remember being in a sales cycle. Actually, I was the buyer, and I remember, there was a certain, and I was like, "I respect you, but I don't like you." Right? I respected the person that was trying to sell me. I think it was a car, maybe. And like the person was like, they were, oh my goodness, it was like one of the worst. Like, shout out for all the females that have been here. And I remember I was buying my first car. I was so excited. I got a career. I was out there, and I'm talking with this sales pro, and he kept talking to my boyfriend at the time. And I was like, "Oh, you dirty." And so did I trust him? No. Did I respect, like, I don't know if even then I was respecting him, but did I still buy from him? So I don't know if necessarily trust needs to be there. And I think, like, when we talk about emotional intelligence, we don't want to confuse the topics. Like,
That's
I
fair.
think there's a whole big topic when it comes to emotional intelligence and trust, right? But do you need it? Do you
No,
need it?
I think, and that comes down to, is it transactional? Because I bought a lot of stuff online that I didn't particularly like the person I was dealing with, but they knew what they were talking about. I bought a
Mhm.
monitor yesterday because I needed an extra
Oh,
screen.
awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And
How was that experience?
it was honestly horrible. Like the people, it was an interesting being a buyer again,
Yeah.
and I've done my research. I am because I love video editing.
Yeah.
I familiar with a lot of the behind the scenes that goes on, and I'm getting people dumbing things down and making me feel stupid when I ask them a much higher level question. And they're like, no, you should look at this. Can you just get me what I asked for? I didn't ask for your opinion. And it's
Like,
like,
why? Yeah, okay.
and it felt like I felt myself like in that knee jerk reaction because it felt like I wasn't being listened to and I was being talked over. And I was basically like the whole thing we talk about meet people where they're at instead of where you want them to be. And it felt
Mhm.
like this person had an agenda and they were just yanking me through and they didn't really, what I said didn't matter. And so at the end of the day, I walked away and I went to
Yeah,
someone else until somebody just got me what I asked for.
yeah. So why didn't you buy it online? Why did you insist on going into the store?
Most places didn't have it available. And
Okay.
so it was scarcity. And so I found one place in the city that had it, so I just went and got it.
Yeah. Yeah. But you already knew exactly what you wanted, right?
Yes.
Like for if we're gonna bring this back into like, like virtual selling, you had already done all of the work. And if there
Yes.
was like a self-serve option, you would have chosen that, even though the price point was significant enough. And I don't know how much you spent on a monitor. I have no idea how much a monitor is. But even though the price point was significant enough that I don't know what 5 years, 10 years, like the idea of buying it online like would have been like there's no way, like I have to touch it, like I have to know what it is, I have to like carry it in a box to know like I actually received it. So like I like how does that change, right? And if we're talking about that specific instance, how would like what could that salesperson have done to like be more emotionally involved, or on a transactional sale does it not really matter?
Um, when I showed up, I was already sold.
Yeah.
He literally did not need to open his mouth. He just needed to go get me what I asked for and maybe do some confirmation, that buyer enablement, and just make sure I like some of the specifics. But he was trying to yank me away where he could have won. And this is where it actually virtual sales started to kind of sing and like ring in my ears is holy crap, buying this product, none of this work was done after I walked in the store.
Yeah.
Nothing changed my mind. I had already spent 2 weeks, 3 weeks researching. And funny enough, first thing I did is ask friends, right? I
Yeah.
went and asked my friends. I went on LinkedIn. I talked to some of the fellow professionals that I know work in the professional environment of video editing and photo editing. I asked them what they thought and kind of the degree that I'm doing. And I did my research and I spent time and I didn't Google anything. That's not where I was
Yeah.
researching. I was talking to people. I was in communities. I was, in the comments on LinkedIn and like different platforms, YouTube, but I never Googled anything. And so
Yeah.
it made me realize that a lot of the things I thought about sales and marketing, whether it was just during COVID time or, even before, have been flipped upside down. And where I thought I needed to show up, it, the sale was already done. The work had already been done.
Yeah.
I didn't need to be that salesman that was talking to me trying to go and redirect them in a different direction. They were already sold. They just needed help.
Okay. So is emotional intelligence inside the sales cycle all about redirecting people, or like where does it play, just like not even talking about virtual sales. Where does emotional intelligence fit inside like a business to business sales cycle?
Great question. To me, it's like being a tour guide, and it's actually connecting with that person to know what they're feeling to match them. And it kind of goes back to our show last week, where the example of telling somebody when you're in a fight to calm down and knowing, right? It's like if
Just calm down.
I would talk to you if you just calm down, Kim, okay? Because that does
What's your problem?
everything. Yeah. But how many times have we been in sales that somebody basically said something that was that trigger that was a basically calm down? And I think in my mind, emotional intelligence is knowing how to read a room, read that situation, and adapt your conversation in a way that meets them where they are emotionally.
Okay.
So if you're sad, maybe I'll use different, stronger language. If you're happy, I would use different language. If you're scared, then I
Mhm.
know I need to back up and maybe I need to take a different approach because say I didn't do my research to go and buy that monitor and I was walking in nervous as hell because if I made a bad purchase, I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
person would have to read that situation and change the way they're talking to me in order to meet me where I'm at.
Okay. I agree. And I think there's more to it than that, right? And I think, like, coming back to that superpower, it's like, I mean, when Daniel Goleman wrote the book Emotional Intelligence, which, I mean, like, when you think about in terms of psychology, it's a relatively, like, new area of psychology. Like, 30 years in terms of psychology is relatively new, considering, like, a lot of, like, the like, psychology research comes out from, like, the 60s and the 70s. And so, 30 years is not a long time to study this. I honestly think where the superpower in emotional intelligence is being able to change people's emotional states in a very natural and fluid way. And I think where salespeople, like where you excel, is how can you do that without someone knowing that it's being done to them? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's an interesting tie-in to like the rise of EI and B2B and why it's a thing. But it's one thing I'm going through KO and learning about the course and watching, like even learning so much from role play
Yeah.
and how somebody can have the same pitch, but they evolve it. And the people, and I think that's it. The people that are like, when I listen to you go and talk to people, it's smooth, and people don't realize smooth doesn't mean that you're using like all the perfect words and like it's slick. It's
Yeah.
just you are reading the situation so well that it's natural, it's flowing, it's smooth.
Yeah.
But it's because
Yeah.
you're reading that situation, you're there, you're meeting them where they're at, and you're taking them on that journey with that conversation and helping them get to where they need to go. And that's where I like that transition of emotion.
Mhm.
And I kind of go back to like if I was scared walking and buying that monitor, if somebody didn't have emotional intelligence, they would talk logic. We would get
Yeah.
all, engineering on me, and they
Yeah,
would
yeah, yeah,
lose me on the
right.
numbers. It's like,
LED versus
yeah,
something else and
oh,
megahertz and, like, you're
is
like,
that
"I
good?
don't
Is
know,
that
this is a bunch
bad?
of
So I need to
numbers."
know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because like, yeah, and yes, like, I actually like, so just even before this class, I actually was teaching a classroom, specifically this module, right? Emotional intelligence. And we talked about the pyramid, right? We talked about, like, the Sun Tzu, know thyself and then know thy enemy. And not that we ever want to see our clients as the enemy, but the idea here is like know where you're at and then where you are. And on the third level, it's exactly what you had mentioned, right? Is being able to read the room, right? Listening, right? Like listening for inflections, listening for changes. At the top level though, this is about like, moving emotional states just through the way we ask those questions. And so as a role play example, right? I mean, we talked about like, okay, we want to invite people to ask like about their feelings. So we talk about current state, right? Well, like what's not working about your current state type of thing. Like what would you want to change about your current vendor? And how does that make you feel? And then we move them into the positive state, right? So where do you ideally want to be, right? People will always be positive and optimistic in the future. So where do you want to be? And how will that feel? And so, I send them off, I go make them do their role play and everything. And it was, as always, whenever like trying to get people to learn a skill set, it's awkward. And it's like, and I'm jumping from room to room and I hear somebody be like, when you ask like the feeling, like it sounds so forced, right? It's like, and how does that feel? Right. And you're like,
Yeah.
ah, like I don't want to be asked that, right? But tonality has something to do with it. And so I brought everyone back. I said, okay, like let's take a look at what happened here. And I said, like, watch me do this role play. And I chose somebody and he didn't even go from like an owner operator type. He was a mid-level manager is the type of role. And I didn't know that at the time. But the idea was, let's see if we can get there. And so yet again, right? It was like, what are you currently doing? How does that feel? Where do you want to be? How does that feel? Because we contrast emotions and we can feel like we will always be driven to away from the things we don't that does not feel good and driven towards the things that do feel good. And if we
Mhm.
can not just talk from a logical standpoint, but get ourselves connected emotionally between what's currently happening is not working, where I want to be is something that feels better, we will naturally go to that place. And so with this role play, we talked about like at this mid-level manager and I said, I was asking the person, how does this feel? And like and what would your role be? And how would like this change like your outcome within the company? And 5 minutes, 6 minutes, the role play, like, it wasn't a very long time. And everyone was like, holy crap. Like, how did you do that? They're like, all of a sudden you took like a situation where it was, how do we solve this? Into now tying it into why I need to champion it because it's going to help me excel my career.
Mhm.
That is emotional intelligence, right? I moved him. It's not just about being able to understand the emotional states. It gets the superpower now is about being able to move emotional states and taking it away from this feels good to now this is my identity. This is
Mhm.
who I am. And that's always going to feel much better when we're associating with that.
As you're talking about that, it made me think of quite a few years ago, I got invited to a meeting and I got pulled into this boardroom and I was just a fly on the wall. And so I got to watch and learn. And I
Yeah.
was this gentleman that was talking was that authoritative figure that you were to be seen, not heard. And when you did speak up, he was very harsh. Like he shut down any he had his agenda, he had his conversation, like, and it was a very tough atmosphere. And then this
Yeah.
gentleman, he had missed going through something. And this gentleman put up his hand and softened his tone of voice and started talking to this gentleman and started to have a conversation where everybody else just shut him down
Yeah.
and got him back on track. And then he just sat there quiet. And I looked at the lady beside me and I'm like, what just happened? And she's like, that's why he's the best paid person in this company, is because he can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, right? And I like and that's a skill, right? Now, like that is not something that you inherently have. And I think this is where a lot of people have to like understand this. Like even beyond sales, like being that emotionally intelligent, being able to like meet people where they are, know where their emotional state is, and then shift their emotional state. Like that is like the ultimate goal because as long as you can get people to like feel good about taking some type of action, feel good about following you, like as a leader, you should always have people feeling good about it. And if they don't feel good, they should also feel welcome to be able to talk about this. Now,
Mhm.
this gets really scary really fast when we get into like artificial intelligence and like how companies are now like really diving into this because like I mean there's a company called Cyrano that I recently I talked about a couple years ago when I did a presentation on AI and sales, and I think like I was like honestly a trailblazer when it came to that kind of stuff. So I'm still doing a lot of research, but I'm up here while like everyone else is playing catch up. Now, Cyrano ended up doing this like incredible thing. They have a chat bot that is like it's considered to be like one of the most emotionally intelligent chatbots. And where the ultimate goal is to get them to a place where specifically like teenagers who are struggling with their mental health can chat this therapist, right? And the therapist will go ahead. You'll chat to this therapist, like, I just don't feel good. And
Mhm.
and because it's a bot, like, let's be honest here, a bot doesn't need to think. A bot is programmed to be like, here's all your responses, right? I mean, look at Watson when he was playing on Jeopardy, right? It was like, here. But what Cyrano ended up saying is that there has to be a selective amount of thinking time between getting a response and answering it. And they've got this down to a science. So if I send you a message saying I don't feel really well, and the bot knows that it's going to respond with something along the lines like, what don't you feel good? Instead of immediately coming back, it goes dot dot dot, thinking. What don't you feel good about? Right? And what that does is it helps to invite the other person, right? There is space required between questions and answers, between framing something and getting a response from it. And it got so crazy, like, and it's still going to go down this path that what happens, and I'm gonna like blow everybody's mind here, right? Put in the chat if you're watching this, like put in the chat if like this idea either blows your mind, like you where you think this is. But what happens when bots become more emotionally intelligent than people?
Whew.
Like, because now that we're able to study this, right? Does a robot become more human than the humans? Right? We can get this right down. And so what we need to look at as there's like number one, like regardless whether we're talking about sales, as companies, we need to be sure that we're going through and teaching emotional intelligence. As sales organizations, we need to put like a non-negotiable in there that every single sales training, every single sales conversation must address emotional intelligence. Because if we only try to compare ourselves on logic, right? Ask me a question, get an answer. Ask me a question, get an answer. What happens when the robots are faster at us than that?
Well, it's
Right?
been proven too that people that have had brain injuries and it's disconnected the emotional and the logical part of their brain, the people that are missing the emotional part of their brain are incapable of making even the simplest decisions. So that tells us that our brains do not work without emotion.
Yeah. We need them. We need it, right? Like, I mean, like this is like what is the back part of the brain, the amalgama or whatever it's called. I mean, this is the whole thing that like, I don't feel good, right? I
Mhm.
feel good, right? This is your flight or fight response, right? And we have like evolved as a society to like think is more logically, but we haven't changed in terms of emotional states. There hasn't been a change in evolution from emotional states. We
Mhm.
will continue to go away from things that feel good and go towards things that feel like or sorry, away from
Other
things
way
that feel
around.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Away from things that feel bad towards things that feel good. That like basic. But it needs to be a skill that we have to learn. And we do this through asking questions like, how does that feel? Right. And tonality has a lot to do with that. Right. But
Mhm.
how does that feel? How do you want to feel? Like, how should we feel? Right. Like, let's just get back to basics. One of the things I always laugh about is everyone who says, oh, Kim, my sale is so complex. It's so complex. Like, and it's like, is it? Is it? Like, because as far as I know, right,
There's still
every
people involved.
human yeah, there's still people involved, and every human just wants to feel better. And if you're complicating it, if you are forcefully making it complex, are you making the person feel better? Who in their right mind says, I feel most secure when I work with something that I have no idea how it works, right? I feel the best when I work with something that's so complicated that I have no idea where to even start with questions, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody does that, right? And it could be complex. Electricity is complex, right?
Mhm.
But from a basic level, all we know is that when it's dark, I feel bad. I don't like the dark. And when it's good, I feel good. And it's easy. I turn the light switch on, I turn the light switch off. I want to feel bad, I turn the light switch off. I want to feel good, I turn the light switch on. Right?
Mhm.
They took something complex and they broke it down. So if
Mhm.
if if your struggle as a salesperson is like, I sales, I'm so complex. I'm so complex. Then it's like, then make it not complex. Right?
Yeah.
Like simplify
Well,
it.
when I go
Right?
to Home Depot
Yeah, yeah.
and I don't know what the hell I'm doing, I don't list off part numbers and this and that. I go, "So I'm working on this thing and this happened? What the hell do
Yeah.
I do?"
Yeah.
And a
I
good
just broke shit.
salesman
How do I
yeah.
fix it?
A good
My
salesman
wife is
takes me in the
mad.
right place.
I
Yeah.
need her not to be mad.
Like, I think that's the part where we've moved away from is we went to, "Oh, you need this, and this." When really the
Yeah.
person's just asking, "Hey, I need to put this picture on the wall. What the hell do I do?"
Yeah. Yeah. I feel bad because this picture's sitting on the ground. I need to feel good because the picture's up on the wall,
Let's be
right?
honest, that's not why you feel bad, it's because you keep hearing about the picture on the ground.
I told my husband, he was like, I bought so last year I bought like this wonderful like it's like a laundry tree, right? It goes in the ground and you can like put out the laundry so it'll all dry. And
Oh,
as I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, right. And so as I'm like closing the door last night, like after the dog comes back in, I say, so 2 years and the laundry tree still hasn't been put up. And he looks at me, he's like, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, maybe the 3rd year I don't have to ask you again, right? I'm like, I want him to feel bad. I want him to feel guilty. I'm like, when it gets cold, like it's really hard to put it in the ground in the frozen ground.
This is Kim establishing a timeline.
Yeah, yeah. It only took 3 years.
So
But, like,
yeah.
but that's but, I mean, that's the basic side of it, right? So, I mean, and not that you want to, like, you don't wanna be manipulative and coercive, right? I think that that
Mhm.
becomes, like, I always laugh at, like, sales, it's like, if you know how to sell really well, you can do it in a way that does manipulate and does coerce. Like, you learn it that way, right? It's just which side, like, are you on the dark side, Luke? Or are you on the bright side? Like, which one are you, right?
Mhm.
And you need to make a decision, right? You can, but how does that serve, right?
Yeah.
So instead of trying to move people emotionally because this is where I want you to feel, we have to ask them, how do you want to feel? And then agree or disagree that you're going to support them to that emotional state. And I
Mhm.
think that is the big difference between manipulation and coercion and those that are there to serve.
So why is this so trendy now? That was the one thing I've been kinda, because I keep seeing it popping up on LinkedIn, and people keep sending me articles, and
Yeah.
honestly, 15 years ago, reading like Dale Carnegie, How to Make Friends and Influence People was kind of the introduction. And then I went down the whole wormhole of like behavioral psychology. And it was really interesting to learn how people think. But like, as much as this isn't new, it is new. But why
Yeah.
now? Why is it such a big topic now, Kim?
So I mean, I think it was big before, right? I mean, we were teaching emotional intelligence inside sales back in 2017 because nobody was at the time. But right now, why I think it's so important is because people have learned to become, I mean, number one, lonely, right? It's lonely working from home, and more people are putting themselves there. But number two, when we communicate in online methods, emails, Slack, any type of messenger type of thing, right? We lose part of that emotional intelligence, which is specifically tonality. Right.
Hmm.
And when you lose that, like you can't like we read tone in an email. There is no tone in an email except for those that are using emojis. Like emojis the closest way to read tone.
Hmm.
But when we lose that, we lose a giant part of the conversation because they say, like, what is it? The written word is only like 3% of communication.
Yeah.
And then you bring in
78% is nonverbal.
yeah, right, and then you bring in tonality, so tonality is technically nonverbal, right? Because all we do is we inflect. If I wrote it, like, I mean, that's the written or the verbal communication. But
Hmm.
tonality is inflections, and then body language is the other piece. And so I think people they're craving that play inside of there. And when you get really good at this, at doing this online through video communication specifically, like the sky is the limit in how fast and how much, because deals close faster with emotional intelligence and they close for way more because people will pay anything to feel good. And if you don't believe that, watch every single get rich, lose weight, make more money quick schemes.
Hmm.
Right. Those people are billionaires when they release a lose 10 pounds in 3 days, right? Make $10,000 in 2 weeks, right? And I don't know what the other ones are, but there's so many of them, right?
Yeah.
People, because that feels good. That feels good. And so we need to get there. And I think, because we're seeing these elongated sales cycles, unfortunately through virtual selling, when we put emotional intelligence back into the conversation in the virtual sales cycle, holy smack, things are happening. And I think that's what people are looking for, but they're not too sure how it fits in just yet.
Yeah, I guess really before COVID, how many people were doing video calls?
Yeah.
How
I
many
remember working.
people were scared to pick
Yeah.
up the phone even back then? Like, it was starting to transition out where people were moving to social media and text, and
Yeah.
then look at all the problems that came from that. How many times have
Yeah.
you got a text message and went, "Oh, crap."
Yeah. Oh, Nick, I could talk to you all day long, but I think I'm at time.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. If you're not already subscribed, make sure you go and subscribe, like, follow us, and please throw your Q&A or your questions in the chat so that I can go and ask him next week.
We'll see you all soon. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.